I didn't hear of Shira until after its fourth season aired and fan art started reaching all the corners of the internet. My roommate and I kept asking each other, why do Blake and Yang look different? Until our dumbasses realized that this was a different Angsty Cat and Herbo Blonde duo. Next time we were scrolling through Netflix, we saw the trailer and we thought, hey, what the hell? We didn't know the show's lore, so when we saw the two characters who we've seen the most of on the internet with clearly the largest fan base, we were confused as to why their home seemed so evil. I mean, the Fright Zone kind of spelling it out for us. We thought, hey, maybe there's a fun twist and the princesses really are evil, but then we meet Glimmer and Bo and it becomes kind of obvious that the Fright Zone really is just evil, and Adora is gonna have to join the good guys. Which, based on all the sexually charged fan art my eyes have been subjected to, that should mean that Catra's gonna go with her. Oh wait, no? Really? Okay. I think this is what made my roommate and I decide that the show is unique and worthy of binging. Clearly the fans love Adora as well as Catra, so how do we root for people on opposing sides? This made me think of the go-to example for this relationship, which is Aang's group versus Zuko. I'm an actual slut for getting to see both the hero side and the villain side, so of course we binged the show in like 2.5 days, singing out the theme song each time, as our other roommate watched true crime in her room so she wouldn't have to subject herself to crying over the power of friendship. There's a lot to talk about since I'm not only reviewing the final season, but the whole show, so I think I'll start with what I consider to be the make it or break it part of most animated shows, the characters. Having the protagonist have such strong ties to the side she later learns is evil, and to use her powers for the side of good despite knowing she's a long way to go to gain the rebellion's trust, immediately tells the audience, hey, despite all the sparkles and hearts, this show isn't going to shy away from complicated characters. This is ironic considering the show seems to be spelling out what's good and what's evil between, the evil horde and the Fright Zone, or the Princess Alliance and the rebellion at Bright Moon. I mean, Shadow Weaver literally floats around with a portable fan blowing on her long hair as she says things menacingly, but clarity in terms of good versus evil is deceptive, and the show later demonstrates that their characters are more than that. Let's start with the protagonist, Adora, who admittedly is my basic decision as favorite character. I think the only requirement to be my favorite character is to be a strong yet lovable goofball with one brain cell and a too big heart, and she fits that role perfectly. She's a good person, there's no denying that, and her sheer awe at experiencing the world outside of the Horde makes us feel pity for her. You notice how Shadow Weaver's emotional manipulation has created her mindset that she must always be the one to protect others, she must always bear the burdens, and if she ever fails, then she's not useful. To be honest, this is a dangerous mindset that stays with Adora even until the last season. It shows that sometimes what you've been conditioned to think won't magically disappear, even after you acknowledge it. This is one of my favorite parts about the show. They never rush change, because that's not realistic. They also don't paint the idea that sacrificing yourself and being 100% selfless is a good thing. The show stresses healthy relationships and self-worth above all else, destroying the common narrative that the hero of a story must take on the weight of the world themselves. Shira's whole plot, even until the end, debunks this notion, and instead insists that sharing burdens and relying on others is often the healthier option, and shouldn't be equated to weakness. I'd argue this is Adora's biggest internal conflict as a character, and I'm glad that they didn't just have her shrug it off after season 1 and magically change her mindset, because after what Shadow Weaver has done, that's just not realistic. Internal conflict aside, I love how Adora's confident warrior side is matched with her dumbass energy. You see hints of this while she's in the Fright Zone, demonstrating it isn't just her new circumstances causing her to act this way. Instead, she's just a dumbass who, despite being a calculating strategist and competent warrior, sometimes does shit that has me both smacking my forehead and dying of laughter.
Yep, wouldn't change a thing. At the academy that we all go to.
Maybe it's the Gen Z in me, but I loved having the protagonist facing danger and war but still acting like a meme. Glimmer, to me, is similar to Adora in the way she feels burdened by her role as commander and leader queen, but acts on her emotions much more rashly. I think it was a great decision to have a character that acts like this, because if you were to have 3 teenagers leading a rebellion, it only makes sense that at least one of them wouldn't be thinking before acting. And I don't think this is necessarily a negative quality, because it combats Angela's more passive stances. Whereas Angela, burdened with the guilt of having been the indirect cause of her husband's death, fears battle, Glimmer runs headfirst into it. This makes a lot of sense for a mother-daughter relationship as well, and it saved the rebellion's asses more times than the fans would like to remember. Glimmer, of course, is wary of Adora at first, but upon realizing that she actually was unaware of the Horde's actions and is willing to change, Glimmer is the first one to demand that she be accepted into the rebellion. She's caring, just like the rest of the best friend squad, but she sometimes lets this get the best of her. I completely understand people being salty at her for her actions in season 4, especially considering how she acts with Bo and Adora, but after realizing that activating the heart of Etheria was a mistake, she completely admits her fault and works to redeem herself. Maybe I'm a Glimmer apologist, but I was pissed at her in season 4. It's just that the show didn't frame it as one of those, now Adora, Bo, you have to apologize to Glimmer too. Instead, the show had Glimmer recognize that she was at fault and apologize, not expecting forgiveness right away.
You get to be mad for as long as you need to be, but I'm not going anywhere. And when you're ready, I'll be here.
Okay.
If that's not a healthy lesson, then I don't know what is. I often stress the difference between reasons and explanations versus excuses, and while Glimmer's behavior and actions in season 4 aren't excused, they definitely make sense for her character. Her mom just died, and the land she's sworn to protect is in severe danger. Her plan is a bad one, but she's following it because she thinks it will protect people. She's headstrong, and at times this leads to mistakes, but perfect characters are boring. Wait, no, not you. You're perfect. Bo is best boy, and anyone that thinks otherwise is lying to themselves. At first, I thought his only position was his cinnamon roll, but the show soon demonstrates that he's technologically savvy and skilled at fighting as well. Out of the 3 best friends, Bo is definitely the best at friendship, and what I respect the hell out of in the show is its ability to showcase what true friendship is. Not just caring for your friends, but being able to balance that out with respecting yourself. Bo has a big heart, but at times, when he feels like he's being treated poorly, he calls his friends the fuck out. This line actually breaks my heart.
You know what? It's not easy being the friendly and upbeat guy all the time. And I get that it's hard being friends sometimes. You gotta work at it. So why am I always the only one who's willing to work at it?
Bo's position oftentimes feels like it's on the back burner compared to Glimmer and Adora, but he's never pushed aside in the plot. The show exceeds my expectations in terms of character balance compared to other shows I still love. But I think Bo's character is what made me realize this. He plays a major role whenever the show discusses strategy and planning, but also when it comes to friendships. Bo is the first character I think of when I consider the power of friendship, and that's probably why I love his character so much. Catra, love her or hate her, is one of the most well-written characters in the show, and I stand by this. People often conflate villains with bad characters, and God is that wrong. Catra is well-written in a way that while I hated her for the first 4 seasons, I wanted her to succeed. Because Noelle was rather transparent about where she intended for Catra's character to go, I was surprised each time Catra went further down the path of self-destruction. You see her go from only being slightly salty to Dora, to completely blaming her for everything wrong in her life, to being so angry with her that she's willing to tear down the fabric of, time and space just to feel like she won. Healthy? God no. Interesting? Fuck yes. Catra's cocky attitude, matched with her desperation for victory, is rooted in a realistic motive. She's had a shit childhood and continues to have a shit life, so it makes sense that she shuts out anyone trying to care for her. The idea that she's bad has been instilled in her mind so much that she can't separate this notion from the path she chooses to take. Sound familiar? The ending of season 4 had me wondering, how the hell is she going to be redeemed in 13 episodes? And while I'll accept the criticism that it was a bit fast-paced, I think the show did a remarkable job. I said before that the show's greatest strength is that it never rushes anything, and I think this applies to Catra's redemption as well. I'm so glad that Glimmer's words were the ones that pushed her to change, because Glimmer and Catra's characters parallel each other in so many ways. Both needed redemption this season, Catra obviously more than Glimmer, but Glimmer knows the steps she must take towards bettering herself, and Catra doesn't. Glimmer's plea for Catra to
do one good thing in your life
is what I consider to be the moment that Catra realizes that just because she's been horrible up until now doesn't mean it has to always be this way. When she sacrifices herself to save Glimmer, therefore keeping Adora away from Amazon Prime, Catra thinks she's dead. Like she thinks she's going to die. That's a pretty big sacrifice in order to make amends. In addition to this, she actually says the words,
I'm sorry,
which, if you've watched the show, aren't often used in her vocabulary. The show doesn't stop here. They stress that while Catra struggles with confronting people she's hurt, it's a necessary part of her change for the better. I love that the show continued this until the end, even if I'd have liked a longer interaction with Scorpia, who was, the one most hurt by Catra, but hey, whatever. In the end, Catra's character was a complex and daring challenge the show set up for itself, and it paid off. The other princesses, who I'm lumping together like an asshole for the sake of time, are all given their own stories, traits, and powers that never feel underdeveloped or pushed aside. In the beginning, I thought they were all side characters, but their personalities all shined in different ways in different parts of the series, especially season 5. Perfuma starts off as the local hippie, but we soon learn that she stands the power of friendship and is a major part in Scorpia's complete acceptance into the rebellion and recognition of self-worth. Frosta seems like an 11 3/4-year-old jerk, but we soon learn that she's an 11 3/4-year-old kid who looks up to Glimmer and wants to protect her people. Mermista, who I fucking love, is the tsundere who becomes the shocking voice of no one left behind when it comes to the Alliance. Entrapta, the character whose skills become imperative in the show's shift, is hilariously brilliant, and is the example that the sides that one takes isn't always an indicator of their moral standing. She also fucks robots. Scorpia, who isn't even treated like a princess throughout most of the show, and God should she be treated like a queen, is like the other side of Bo. She loves friendship, but oftentimes lets others, aka Catra, walk all over her. Her internal fight throughout the show is recognizing her own worth and that friendship shouldn't be one-sided. And Netossa and Spinnerella, okay, I was originally going to make fun of these background characters, but they actually showed up for season 5. I'd rather have characters stressed for long durations of only certain seasons than have all of the characters be shoved in for equal portions every episode. Netossa, aka Princess of Dragging the Princesses, really shined this season, from being the competitive yet loving character we knew her as, to being one of the most important characters. Spinnerella, despite being mind-controlled most of the season, is still showcased as a character through her relationship with Netossa. Their growing relevance as characters in the final season made it feel valid that characters like Mermista and Scorpia were pushed back for the latter half of the season. In fact, it makes sense for them to be controlled by Prime, considering that we needed more time to focus on the main plot. Now, because I'm a super bitch, I'll summarize my feelings for the other characters with one sentence each. Imagine a sexy pirate too confident in his one brain cell. Imagine chaotic neutral just trying to thrive under the crushing weight of capitalism. Imagine Linguini from Ratatouille, but unwillingly working for Salem. Imagine a lizard, but Linguini from Ratatouille is working for Salem and has a crush on him. Imagine the 1010 of Shira who puts up with too much shit. My friend and I named this one Gregory, and we forgot that wasn't his canon name. Imagine the toppest top who's ever topped, except she's actually a bottom. Imagine a character that would probably be played by Will Ferrell in a live-action movie. Imagine nothing relevant. Imagine a literal queen. Imagine a literal queen, but now she's dead. Imagine a dad except traumatized. Imagine dads except not traumatized. Imagine Alexa, but ancient. Imagine a dick. Imagine a dick except Entrapta wants to fuck it. Imagine your grandma. Now let's talk plot. Shira follows the typical storyline of the first season or two being rather episodic, building up to a larger plot with more at stake. If I'm being honest, not much differentiates the first 2 seasons for me, which is fine because I like when a show doesn't rush the world building and character setup. A lot of the action ends with the rebellion failing, but having to build up its confidence. This makes sense considering they only just got the Princess Alliance together and the Horde is objectively stronger. I would argue that the first 3 seasons are almost all world and character building, meeting the princesses and then having that one scene that makes the viewers scream that this series will end in lesbians or end in flames. Then the turning point of the series comes. The portal. This is where we see the world in a way that, while everything seems to be as it should, is wrong. Adora breaks out of it first with the power of protagonist, and after realizing that Scorpia also notices how weird things feel, eventually understands that this is not their world. People start disappearing, and Adora's like, holy fuck, I need to go find my friends who probs don't remember me. And Bo and Glimmer are like, holy fuck, we don't remember you. And Adora's like, oh hey, you're that dead guy. And Micah is like, take this bitch to jail, what the fuck? However, Glimmer is like, shit yeah, he is dead. And Bo is like, why am I wearing a whole shirt? And they take Adora to where she can close the portal, but she realizes that she'll be stuck inside, and since her protagonist juice just hasn't run out yet, Angela is like, hey, I think I'm gonna sacrifice my life so my daughter can have a sick power upgrade, and also outfit upgrade, but fuck you and Bo. Season 4 is pretty much just the status quo, except Etheria is a super weapon, and Glimmer decides she wants to use that for the rebellion. Bo and Adora think that's silly. Double Trouble wreaks havoc, and they are eventually discovered, not before Glimmer and Adora's trust is shattered. Bo and Adora sneak off to save Entrapta from Beast Island, and while they're there they find Micah, who's been pulling a Jurassic Park. When they get back, they realize Glimmer already enlisted Shadow Weaver's help in activating the heart of Etheria by having Scorpia connect to her stone. Surprise, surprise, this wasn't a sexy idea, and Amazon Prime comes to beam up the rental clone, also taking Glimmer and the kitty who just got owned by Double Trouble. Adora was like, what if I make my sword cosplay the viewers' hearts? Season 5 was where the stakes were at their highest. As Primey Boy senses soldier things, Adora lets it get in her head that she can't do shit without her sword, and as the rebellion stays to fight, she and Bo head to space with freshly accepted Entrapta to save Glim Glim. Meanwhile, in space, Glimmer is not vibing with Prime's emotional manipulation, and she and Catra form a shaky bond, one that makes sense considering how their characters are paralleled. I love how when Glimmer talks so openly about feeling guilty and wanting to make things right, Catra's definitely feeling a lot internally. She feels like she's strayed too far from the path of good to share this sentiment, but you get the sense she wants to. Glimmer makes the most passive-aggressive comment in all of cinematic history.
Catra! Do one good thing in your life!
And Catra actually does.
I want to do that one good thing in my life.
Getting Glimmer to Adora and Bo, Catra is taken to Prime, who acts like a big ol' creep. Bo is salty at Glimmer, rightfully so, and Adora is just a big nerd and I love her. They pop off in space and meet the Star siblings, and She-Ra makes a short appearance to save her buds. Adora simps for Catra and they go to save her. Bo and Entrapta meet Wrong Hordak, who is running late to his first day of being subordinate to the ultimate Horde Prime, and Adora has to fight Catra. She's all on and off being brainwashed, but ultimately pulls a Humpty Dumpty, and Adora's dumbass follows her. And, as one does when your cat GF is like, dead, she awakens her internal 8-foot-tall sword lady and kicks ass. Catra struggles with facing people she's hurt, starting with Entrapta, and Wrong Hordak is just like, with them, now, I guess. They find a planet known as Primey Boy's weakness and realize, oh shit, it's magic, and Catra, who's been dubbed Resident Cutie, makes a cat friend that can cosplay Season 1 Atossa and Spinnerella. Get it? It disappears. Like it's not there. Anyway, the disappearing cat act gets them landed, and they learn that while they were gone, a few of their friends hit the club. Scorpia had an amazing musical number, Double Trouble made a return.
A little help? I need to lift my hand to the heavens. The theater has many secrets!
And now half of their friends are being mind-controlled. Shadow Weaver explains that there's a failsafe, but it will require She-Ra to be the bearer, as no mortal body could survive the power. Adora, who always feels like she needs to bear the burden of the world, easily agrees, and Catra calls out her overly selfless behavior. And Mara seconds the point.
You're worth more than what you can give to other people.
Bo and Glimmer fight Scorpia and Micah respectively, and I get emotional. Shadow Weaver sacrifices herself to save Catra, and after an entire childhood of forcing emotional manipulation and trauma onto Catra and Adora, she chooses to say,
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Like, what the fuck? So as the rebellion fights, and we see the power of Etherians, Adora gets to the heart of Etheria, and realizing that she can't transform, accepts that she will probably die saving the world. Catra stays, and as Adora is transported into some gay future fantasy, Catra confesses her love to a dying-ass corpse. Because after 5 seasons of not communicating, now is a great time to tell her how you feel. Gay fantasy Adora hears the call and wakes up, and because this show knows what content I'm here for, the power of fucking love saves the world. She-Ra shows up to obliterate Prime, and the world is saved, and I cry some more. The plot is great because the lessons are subtle and healthy. There's a great amount of action, and the show does a phenomenal job in paralleling scenes. A character may say or do something in Season 1 that resurfaces in Season 5, and the lines the show chooses to showcase are always so intentional.
You deserve love too.
I went into Season 5 with certain expectations, and boy are they met, if not exceeded. To be honest, the only thing that really was different than I thought was that Angela didn't come back, and I respect that. Too often when a show shies away from the word dead, they're setting up for a character to come back, and I'm glad they committed to her death. Angela's sacrifice was the one monumental thing the show did for her, and to bring her back wouldn't do it justice. Concerning the show as a whole, the plot felt well paced for me. As I said, the beginning took its time with world and character building, and the latter half is where stakes got higher and characters became a bit more serious. However, the show never loses its humor.
Is what I would have said before I joined you. Go team.
As for animation and character design, this was a huge topic of debate surrounding the show. To be honest, I feel like if someone was that bothered by the show deciding to add diversity within the characters, they could have just not watched the show instead of ranting about it online for 5 seasons, then attacking the show's creator.
This is just a waste of time.
But hey, here I am, ranting as well. Instead of focusing on that, I'll just talk about what I enjoyed. The characters have so much personality, and their designs tell a lot about their skills. If we're talking about animation as the basic term, then yeah, I get why some people aren't wowed. There are struggles with consistency sometimes, but the color choices, flow of animation, and overall aesthetic more than make up for that. I love the animation because it always fits the tone they're going for. The colors of the Fright Zone demonstrate this well enough versus the way Glimmer's room looks. While watching the show, you feel transported into a magical universe, one unlike ours. Overall, I loved the show and the risks that they took, and all those risks paid off. It went hard enough on the emotions that I was super invested, but wasn't so bleak that I was left feeling empty surrounded by a bunch of dead characters. It's definitely a show I'd classify under the genre of power friendship, which is my favorite genre. It's easy to identify with the characters because they're all flawed. Well, most of them are flawed. Not you. Either way, the show makes you really care about its characters, both good and bad, and normalizes a lot of things that it's about damn time to be normalized. The protagonist had to learn that giving away everything you have for others isn't a good thing, and you need to rely on others sometimes.
I'm not Shira. I'm not a hero anymore. I'm just me. I can't do this alone.
But Adora, you aren't alone.
The show also ends with multiple LGBTQ+ relationships, clearly stated, and the two main characters are one of them. After so many relationships like this only being nodded at, the recent amount of shows that have been making it not only clear but normalized are a breath of fresh air. No show is perfect, not even this one, but it's definitely a show with flaws that are much easier to overlook than within other shows. I may be in the honeymoon phase with this, but I can guarantee that it was worth the watch.
So, what are we gonna do now?